Hi, this is Lorne Epstein. I'm your host at the Lorne Epstein Show here on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia, broadcasting from the Unleash HR Tech Conference here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I've got some really special guests today. It's a returning guest and a new guest. And we are going to tell stories. So we've talked a lot about kind of what's going on in HR, what's going on in technology. And I think we've had enough of that. I think we're going to move on to some really interesting interpersonal stories from folks with quite a bit of experience in the HR world. So with me today, I have Robin Schooling. Robin is on a mission to make organizations better by making human resources better. Robin is the Vice President of HR for Hollywood Casino Baton Rouge. But don't ask, she cannot tell you which slot machine will hit. Too bad. She has a popular blog called robinschooling.com and has written for Fast Company and Recruiting Daily. And I've read the blog. There's some great stories there. I highly recommend you go and take a look. She's on the advisory board for HR onboarding and manages the Carnival of HR and has held volunteer positions with the Society for Human Resource Management. Welcome to the show, Robin.
Thank you, Lorne.
And she comes from Louisiana.
Yes.
But she's not from Louisiana.
No, I'm a transplant. I'm a 17-year transplant.
And also with us, I have a repeat offender. This is your second time on the show.
Yes.
Bill Boorman. Bill is a recovering recruiter, having spent 35 plus years in the industry. He fills his time in as the Managing Director of Innovation and Technology at Recruiting Daily, and he runs #TRU events. He also advises talent technology startups. He has worked with Oracle, BBC, Hard Rock Cafe, and others on using technology in the workplace. He never wears a suit and always wears a hat. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Thank you.
And
Thank
you
you. It's good to be back.
You have a beautiful hat on.
Good to be here. Thank you, Mike.
Would you consider that a fedora?
It is a fedora, so a hat tip to you.
Very good, very good. All right, well, maybe I
It is indeed a fedora.
scored my first host point.
Yes.
So, one of the things I think you both bring to this the conversation, I know, like, you know a lot about HR, you know a lot about technology, but the truth is I think that you've gained all of your wisdom by your experiences and what you've seen. And I want to talk about those. I want to talk about some of the defining experiences in story, share the story about what really kind of, and we'll talk about the past, right? So what stories could you share that really represents that past HR workplace mindset, that was just like, it's like looking back, it's like Mad Men. And whoever wants to start.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's any different. We're saying, like, looking back, it's like Mad Men. We have these moments of, sometimes it's discovery. But I think the bottom line, the memories that really stand out for me are things like I remember someone being interviewed, interviewing someone as part of a group interview, offering them a job. That was kind of part of the run-of-the-mill stuff that I did every day, interviewing lots of people, offering people jobs. And then coming out of the interview room and they were in tears, their family were in tears. And for me, it was just an ordinary job and it was another candidate and it was another opportunity.
And you were the interviewer?
I was the interviewer. So I was effectively the one who said to them, okay, congratulations, you can have this minimum wage call centre job, which for me was not a lot. But then discovering that the reason they were so emotional about getting that job offer was it saved their house. There was a lot of impact of that. And I always,
what kind of job was it?
It was a contact centre, minimum wage. It was not, what you'd like to think of, like the VPs or the big,
a call centre job.
Yeah. So I think getting that back, those kind of memories where we need to have reality checks sometimes that brings us back to there's people at the end of all our process, and there's people at the end of, and if whatever we do, and if it's from an HR function, whether it's a payroll issue or it's somebody getting hired or it's someone getting moved in their career, or also the people who you've known who you took a chance on early in their career and they've repaid that confidence and gone on and had good careers, and you meet them later and they come back and say, if I wouldn't have got that entry level opportunity when I probably wasn't qualified for it, but you gave me a go at it. When you get those stories, they're the things that take you back to remembering the human piece of this. And that's the piece I think we lose a lot in all the other good stuff we're doing around data and technology and employer brand and all this kind of stuff, is remembering at the end of the day, there's a lot of people relying on what we do. And I think the other point that these stories illustrate, and Robin will jump in on this, I'm sure, is I think from an HR perspective, we've spent so long battling and bleating about getting a seat at the table and having influence. And all of the answers we're getting back from the experts are, if you want to have a seat at the table, you've got to look at things from a business perspective. You've got to make your decisions based on what's right for the business and what you do for the business. That I think we've gone further and further away from saying what's right for the people. So our organisations have no trade unions, they have nobody representing them. They have the role of HR is becoming increasingly important to be for the people, by the people.
You know, I had an experience once outside of work where I was in a workshop and we were doing some process, and it occurred to me the thing that makes me feel human is being connected to other people. And when you share that story, it reminds me of like that post-Third Ghost Scrooge moment.
Yeah.
Right? where like that is the...
And I have these third ghosts, you know, I could call my life a Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
So I can look back at large parts of my career where the me now would not be proud of my performance. The me now. Like morally, I'd look at it and say that was not a cool thing, that these people that I fired or these decisions that I made were not cool. And Robin is great at telling you real stuff because she has a real job, whereas
you live in a
I make up work, really.
In your old world.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that that you kind of went there with kind of the moments that stand out for you, because to me, I think what's colored how I approach HR for the many, many years now that I've done it has been really a very similar thing. Because when I entered the real world of work, and my first, job outside after school was at a staffing agency, and which ultimately is how I got into HR, started in a recruiting agency. But I had what I would classify as no skills, no experience. I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and I went into this agency to have them help place me somewhere, and instead they hired me to work at the agency, and that's how I...
Doing what?
I was basically like the office assistant, receptionist, assisted with payroll, because we had a temp, side as well as the perm placement side, the direct placement. And then I started working with some of the temp jobs and taking some of the job orders and that sort of thing. And I kind of segued into that staffing world a little bit. But I was desperate, quite frankly, for a job. I was a single parent. I had really what I would say, no money, really. I had been raising my child on, welfare and government cheese, you name it. I mean, all of that. And somebody took a chance on me and helped me kind of grow my career over time. And I think every subsequent job that I've had, I've never forgotten what it was like. And so now the people that I interact with, our applicants, our employees, I get it. I will sit in meetings with my fellow leadership team who are making decisions as if it's a bunch of numbers, as if it's, well, here's the P&L and here's the staffing and here's this, and we're overlaying schedules and who's doing what and here's the revenue, and we can cut these people's hours, and and I'm like, we're paying them $9-10 an hour already. How are they going to feed their families? I have people that struggle getting to work because they don't have money to put gas in their car. And I remember being that myself, and that was many years ago, but I never lose sight of that.
And how do those conversations play?
Sometimes I think I'm seen as the fluffy HR lady, bringing
sometimes
up
the Marxist trade unionist.
And it kind of is. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, they must think I'm, it's like communist here and there, yay, power to the people.
Which is very popular in Louisiana, being a communist. That goes down well.
And so they kind of, sometimes dismiss it collectively, but we'll have side conversations afterwards.
Right.
And there is validation to me from other leaders, certainly from managers, directors, of I get a lot of thank you for speaking up about that.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid to.
Yeah.
And maybe something won't change drastically, but maybe something will, or little incremental stuff.
And I think that's what people want. That's what it's always struck for me about what you do. People want to feel that, not necessarily that their issues are going to be dealt with, but that there is someone who'll listen, and there is someone who will take what, in the scale of the business, looks like a very small problem as a very credible one. You know, we'll actually take something with it and try and do something with it. Try and make things a bit better, and maybe you will, and maybe you won't.
Say more about that.
I think there's hundreds of things. You know, Robin has lots more day-to-day examples than me, but I think it's things like, you know, I remember working with some people, and they had a whole succession of minor issues about how much time people talk to them. And I was kind of introducing some performance management reviews and doing this kind of 8-star stuff. And I was going out and meeting people and saying, how are you getting on? And they were saying, yeah, I think I'm doing okay. I think I'm doing okay. I said, well, why do you think you're doing okay? I said, well, no one's given me a hard time recently. So I think I'm okay. I don't really know, but I think I'm okay. And then I had another office that I remember really clearly where I had 2 people working for me. One of them was my top performing sales guy in the recruitment business. One of them was massively underperforming. I used to go and see these 2 guys in an office. And the one who was underperforming, I used to take him in the back office all the time, spend a few hours with him, give him a warning, like say, you don't want to be doing this, you don't want to be doing that. Then go out to the other guy who's really performing and just say, yeah, great, everything okay, excellent, walk out the door. And then he left, like my top performer came out and said, right, I'm off. And I said, well, why are you off? He went, well, you never spend any time with me. Like, there's this guy who I know is rubbish, and he's got all your love. Attention. It's kind of like a parent thing. I think those are lessons that stand out in your mind where you go, sometimes making a difference to people isn't necessarily the doing the things, but it's the fact that someone will sit down and say, I'm going to listen to you. And if you want me, if we want to change, we've had to change things. But when we've had the conversation, they've just gone, yeah, we don't really like the colour of the staff restaurant, or small things small things which actually I can go, yeah, that's not very hard for me to change. That's $50 job. Get someone to give it a repaint. But they go, yeah, you listen to us. And I think that's the more we drive down the technical route, the less people talk and listen to each other, and the less opportunity. Someone who Robin used to work for, I remember saying something in a presentation that really stuck in my mind, which was about accidental engagement. All the engagement we do in work is deliberate, intentional. We have this meeting for this, we have that meeting for that. But actually, things you really find out are finding enough opportunity to be leaning against the water cooler, or be in the car park, or just be visible in your business, so that people, because again, we have to understand, you know, for people on minimum wage and stuff, coming and knocking on the door of the HR department is a big deal. They're very worried about that, you know. So they will not necessarily approach and tell us what's going on. And people leave jobs, I've learned over the years. People rarely leave jobs for big things, they leave for a succession of small things. Things that make them unhappy every day, and they might be different things. And our job is to be there for that and have those conversations. And some of them we fix, some of them we don't fix.
And I think one of the challenges collectively that we have in HR, and this is a vast generalization, but so often HR professionals will have a tendency to discount the complaints, if you will. And I'm air quoting complaints, but if an employee has an issue, no matter how trivial it may seem, it's important to them. And it's our responsibility to listen and to give them that opportunity to talk about it. And we may then go back to the rest of our HR team and kind of, oh my God, you won't believe what Sally came in here and, you know, is having an issue with. But 99% of the time, Sally, it's important to Sally. She's not making it up. It's, you know,
it stops her being able to do her job, or it makes her uncomfortable, or it makes her feel
right.
Yeah.
And it can be the paint the bathroom a certain color. It can be what seems like a really silly thing, but it's important to people. We just had a major several months ago, 3-4 months ago, and this probably went on for about 6 weeks. This major hubbub around the employee parking lot and who could park where, and certain people could park here, and you know, supervisors could not park here, but if you're a manager or above, you could park here. And it went on for weeks. And it was, you know...
And usually it's because nobody's dealing with it. No one's actually going, right, let's make some decisions, let's communicate and get it done.
There were some leaders of the organization that were like, this is so trivial. Why is this consuming so much time? Well, and it did consume a lot of time, but it was this kind of representative issue of some bigger things as well. Mm-hmm. And
because parking and things like that become about hierarchy, personal recognition. Yeah. I have a space, therefore I am a. It's these things that, when you're earning $15 an hour, are really important.
Yeah. So it's just. I find that, and I guess this becomes then how I approach HR, how I've always approached HR, no matter my role, whether it be big company, small company, whether I'm the top HR dog or have been a minion in a 35,000 employee company, is I'm there to remove the obstacles that are preventing people from doing their best work. Yeah. I often see myself as I'm minimizing the little tensions, the frictions. If I can do that, I can be an HR rock star if I can help them do that or help them navigate it. I may not be the one who has the power to remove a particular obstacle or change some sort of operational thing, but damn it, I'm gonna try my best, or I will start that conversation on their behalf if they feel they can't.
There was a story,
manager.
One of the first times I met Robin was at Louisiana Sherman. There was a story from one of the speakers, and it's one of those speaker moments that stick in your mind as being a lesson that you take forward. I think he was the CEO of the Hornets.
The Hornets. The NBA.
Which is the NBA team. And he did an interesting talk, kind of general stuff, which I was okay with. But
who are now the Pelicans, by the way.
The lesson that really stood out for me was when he said, I have people who work for me who earn millions of dollars a year. But most of the people who work for me earn minimum wage flipping a burger. He said, and when you wash it down, you take away all the agents and all the other stuff, what the people earning millions of dollars want is exactly the same as the people who flip the burgers. They want recognition. They want to feel secure. And he said sometimes, you think about it, the guys who are earning millions of dollars as players are the most insecure because they have no control of their future. They can just be traded next week and move to another town, and then you've got to upend your family. And he's saying then we have people coming towards the end of their careers. We have people who have injuries which threaten their career and their future when they don't know anything else. He said, so basically, fundamentally, the things that all these people need from a human HR point of view are the same things. They want that reassurance, love, direction, feedback, time, someone who listens to them, somebody who deals with their disputes so they don't get out of hand. Mm-hmm. That's what they want. And I always remember that from looking at it and saying, and he's basically saying, so the people who work in the burger shop, they have the same issues and worries as the people who are, and you think the guys who earn millions of dollars wouldn't have any worry, but actually they all want the same fundamental human things.
You think we're getting better at that as a culture? I mean,
we're getting much worse.
Oh, much worse.
We're terrible with people. We don't...
you think we're worse with people than we were 20, 30 years ago?
What we've done as organisations is the reason we're not processing automation of work is we've made people cheaper. And we've made people automations. We've made people perform. We've broken jobs down to the smallest parts of task, the single parts of task. We've made people do it repeatedly. We've introduced technology that even monitors when they're going to the bathroom and what they're doing. We've used more and more technology we've used more and more technology to monitor and manage things than to actually make things better.
Or elevate them as a contributing person.
As anything other than. So what we've done is we've why automation hasn't got as far as it could have done is we've made it cheaper to use people, and that's why I'm talking from a European point of view, but it's very similar problems in the US. 0 hours contracts, no continuity, no security. The gig market means somebody who is loading a lorry and earning less than minimum wage and maybe getting 4 hours one day, 10 hours the next day, is gauged and managed and talks about being motivated the same way as someone like me who's a consultant getting $1,000 for a day's work. And we're being compared as the same thing, saying, oh, it's convenience and stuff like that. So it's not convenience, it's necessity. So all of the many jobs that have been created, which people are championing and cheering about, and I can only talk from a European point of view, I'm not a US expert by any means. The increased employment, the more people working, the less people, all that kind of stuff, has generally been at the expense of the people. It's been no security. Gig economy means no security. It doesn't mean convenience. It's nice to dress it up as convenience.
Things change when we don't have security. I mean, like, you know, people can't own homes.
Right.
Or they may not get married, or they may not have children. I mean, it gets very hard to make those kind of big life commitments when you're not sure, like you may be living lean for a while.
And I've run into folks, you know, a lot of applicants that I'll see, you know, and we hire, you know, so in the casino industry, I mean, it's a fairly normal model. Like any sort of hospitality, you have, you know, a fair number of part-time positions because you want that flexibility around, you know, volume and when your business picks up and, you know, or slows down, that sort of thing. So we have a lot of part-time positions. And that's common also, you know, food and beverage industry, you know, that sort of thing. But we have a number of employees, number of applicants that are patching together multiple part-time jobs. And so I have several right now that will get off of their part-time job with us, and as soon as they hit the parking lot, they flip their phone on and they're doing Uber on the way home.
Or whatever they do.
Or, you know, to see if they can handle it. Or they're running from one part-time job to the other. And so it's interesting because we just recently had this conversation. Had one of our part-time employees who had, I think, 2, maybe 3 other part-time jobs, and trying to juggle those schedules, you know, and trying to work through, well, this one ends at 2, but I have to be over here by 1:30, and it's a 15-minute drive, so I, you know, and can you adjust my hours at this job so I can get from my other job? And neither organization wants to budge, or sometimes can't budge if it's a,
no,
kind of a regulated thing.
People are dispensable.
But
somebody else
right.
will do it.
And
someone else will
so,
take that 4 hours because they need it.
You know, it used to be where you would be able to say to somebody, well, this is your full-time job, so, you know, and if you have a part-time gig, that's kind of your secondary job, so your full-time job is where you give your dedication to, and that's going to be your primary, what you schedule around. We can't even have that conversation with people anymore because they've patched together all these part-time jobs. And
you're also not doing those part-time jobs because you want it.
No, they need to.
You have to do 3 jobs to have a wage that means you can afford to live.
Right. So while the convenience, I sound more and more like a socialist as we keep going on.
I am proud
you know,
revolutionary.
The answer, you know, certainly a lot of these changes, and it's industry specific and whatever, you know, but they're driven by business needs or revenue or whatever it may be.
And the businesses argue that they have to do that because that's how they stay competitive and that's how they can compete with overseas national companies or automation or whatever it is. So
yeah, but when you look at the numbers, I mean, I'm projecting here, and I think I'm probably more in line with what workers would want, is that the stock market and hedge funds are taking more and more capital out of play.
Yes.
I mean, 20 and 30 years ago when you worked at a company, there was a lot of money to do stuff, to travel, to go to trade shows, to get training, company parties, all sorts of premiums. It was never really so much a function of budget, and now like, the money's just gone.
Yeah, the money's gone, and I think this...
And you can see it in the economy. I mean, you see a much smaller lower class and much smaller middle class, and then there's a huge bump at the end.
If there's what I think is, I'm speaking from a European perspective now, and so you can tell me whether I'm right or wrong in the US, but I don't think we have a middle class anymore.
No.
I think we have an upper-lower class of people who actually can afford a few things.
Yeah.
And then we have really wealthy people.
Yeah.
We have people who earn lots of money and continue, you know, it's like 80% of the world's worth. goes to 5% of the people
Yeah.
who don't pay any tax and don't do any of the normal things that we relate to. And I think this is why you have an underlying, because a big problem which you wouldn't necessarily think of, but is increasingly becoming a problem in organisations that I talk to HR professionals about, is when we talk about diversity, we might think of that being a colour issue, we might think of that being a gender issue, we might think about LGBTQ issues, but actually increasingly the biggest issue in workplace is political diversity. Because
In Europe.
in the world,
Yeah.
in the world, because politics everywhere.
Because here in America, I mean, everyone's
But it's
pretty much on
become
the same
polarizing.
page.
Yeah, everyone
That's
agrees
what I
with
think.
it.
I don't know.
But politics has become polarizing because people are angry. So what you're getting is more and more people who might have been colleagues for 10, 15 years and got along and might have, one of them might be a liberal, one of them might be a conservative, whatever they are, but they've got on because it's never been a discussion point in their life. You know, they've been more bothered about the football or the basketball or whatever it is, you know, about normal things people talk about. Suddenly these things are becoming, they're dividing workplaces where people are saying, I won't work with them or
This happened to me in my life. So I have a friend who I've known
Yeah.
for decades. I had no idea that he had conservative leanings politically because we never talked about politics.
Or
And then
even really were
in the
bothered about it
election-
in the past. Like you'd be, whatever you go and vote for, you go and do
Exactly.
that. Because
10 years ago, all of a sudden the election came up with, you know, and it was like, oh, I didn't know you felt that way. And I mean, I still love the guy. It does not change my opinion about him, but I was just surprised that
See,
we had never really had that conversation.
I think that the political diversity, yes, I think that's a factor in there. Where I think the biggest diversity issue kind of arising, and then we think about the secondary piece of that, well, how do we make people feel included in the organization, is, and I'm just going to use a very blanket term, but I think it's more socioeconomic. It's the haves and have-nots. That's where I see the deepening divide, and I think that's where things are going to start really coming into play in more and more workplaces. It's the haves versus have-nots. So it's not just the wealth and that sort of thing, but all the factors that go into that, and what does that allow somebody then to bring to an organization? That all of that feeds into, if mom and dad are working 3 part-time jobs to just barely scrape by, where does that leave this kid who's going to be the worker for us in 5-10 years? That affects his or her ability of where they're going to go to school. What are they going to do? How are they going to learn? I see a lot of people that don't have, we take for granted. We're all sitting here with our, smartphones out and laptops and whatever. I see a lot of people that do not have access to technology. They may have a phone, but they don't have a data plan.
I have a conversation with Robin, and we're talking about Louisiana, and I'm relating a story to South Africa. When I went out to South Africa, I did some work with Nando's and a couple of organisations, and they were talking to me, and they said, yeah, all this stuff is great, but only 30% of our employees have the internet. So if you're going to put a learning and development system on the internet, that's going to be a problem. If you're going to use a mobile app for doing this, that's going to be a problem because data's expensive and that kind of thing. So I started relaying that story as Africa. Really. And Robin then pipes up and goes, no, that's America. Like, this is my life. And I think we have, especially we're at HR Tech, which is a great show, but we have this bubble that tends to look at technology companies.
Yes.
Tough to fill positions,
Yes.
war for talent, all this kind of stuff, whereas the majority of the employees are not served.
Right.
And I say that as a global issue. The majority of people who go work every day are not served in their best interest either by the company, by the system, by the process.
Yeah. So I wanted you to share the story, Robin, because I loved it, about when you had a really bad day. Because I think that there's a little bit of an...
a lot of those. I don't know. You probably have to be a bit more specific.
No, she knows. She wrote about it on her blog.
I do. I did.
Because you said you did something occurred that was unusual, and I think there's a...
Was that when the alligator ate the employee, or was that a different story? That's another story.
That was a different day. I'm trying to remember now what I wrote specifically.
You know what? Think about it, and we'll come back in a second.
Okay.
We'll take a quick break.
Okay.
You're listening to the Lorne Epstein Show. I'm your host, Lorne Epstein, here on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia, broadcasting from Las Vegas, Nevada at the Unleash Conference. We'll be back in just a second. Hi, I'm Lorne Epstein, and you're listening to The Lorne Epstein Show, where we talk about jobs, careers, and the workplace, here on 96.7 FM. If you're interested in being on the show, you can give me a call at 240-876-0276 or email me at Lorne, Lorne, at electriccow.com. You can check out our Facebook page, which is Lorne Epstein, and also our Mixcloud account. So if you go to mixcloud.com, Lorne Epstein, you'll find our shows. Thanks so much. Welcome back. I'm your host, Lorne Epstein. You're listening to The Lorne Epstein Show here on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. We're talking to Robin Schooling and Bill Boorman. Robin, the story I was referring to is when you were having a really bad day and you went to the cafeteria, I think, or the coffee room. Mm-hmm. You remember which one I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, can you tell us the story?
I do. So I don't even remember. It was a typical day. Let me just say that. There are all sorts of things happening in HR, and we're very busy. We have lots of people in and out, lots of activity, and I was thinking stuff at home, stuff at this, whatever, and so it's a public organization, and we kind of do the whole backstage, front stage, type of thing. And when you walk out in the public areas, you better be on. So I walking through the public areas. I'm on, greeting, hi, goodbye. We do that, greeting the guests, and I hit the employee dining room. So I'm backstage again, and I just went back into like my, sunken face, whatever. Oh, thank God I'm in here. I'm gonna have a cup of coffee, go have a cigarette, whatever. And one of our employees said to me, Miss Robin, because of course it's Miss Robin in the South. Are you okay? Is everything okay? And I found myself switching right over to happy shiny HR lady. Oh yeah, thanks for asking. And then I thought, what the hell am I doing? And I just kind of switched right back to no. And I said, no, I'm really, quite frankly, having kind of a shitty day. But I'll be okay. I'm gonna grab some coffee, go have a smoke, and everything will be okay. Oh, okay, Miss Robin, hope you feel better. Gave me a hug. And it made me realize, I needed that little boost, but it made me realize that we can be, and I always talk about this, but the reality is we can be human in HR as well. And it helps because, these are our coworkers as well. We're not just the HR department, if you will, and to have an employee feel the need to kind of console and hug and say it'll be okay to the head of HR is kind of a neat thing.
I hope you let me co-opting your story for a second.
Yeah.
Because what I took out of the story was that that businesses are kind of like, hey, everything's going okay, and we don't really, we know when things aren't okay. We don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And to open ourselves up to like, okay, this is just another person. I'm just going to talk to you, and there's this is not bad, but I'm going to relate to you as a human being. And corporations don't do that.
Yeah.
And then people are like, hey, wait a minute, you are a person.
Yeah.
And it drives people crazy. I think fundamentally that just drives us nuts because we look at companies that do things that don't seem sane and wonder what's wrong. Mm-hmm. And companies can't be honest. Mm-hmm. They can't say exactly what's going on and get some understanding and maybe get some cooperation or some problem solving or some movement in how we deal with each other.
Yeah, it's also taking some time to get empathy for things. So more and more of the issues that we're looking at, like I think we're looking back now and we're thinking about things. I don't want to go too far in this discussion, but if you think about the Me Too movement or things like that,
no, let's go.
I think we can all relate back in our working lives and actually think of things where we think, if I had my time again, I would have stepped in or intervened in that situation or said something, or maybe with a group of people, whether it was a race issue, whether it was a sexist issue, whatever it is, if I had my time at that situation again, I'd like to think I would step in and intervene, right? But we could justify it by saying, oh, well, it was a different time or it was a different... So I think we had a different social conscience in the past of what, for whatever reason, of what we thought was acceptable. We can look back and say, with hindsight, I can look back at some of not my finest moments. When, okay, I might not have been a nuisance, or might not have been racist, or might not have been any of the things that I'm strongly opposed to now, but I was an enabler because I never did anything about it at the time. Mm-hmm. And I also felt if I would have done anything about it at the time, I would have been a lone voice in the dark, seen as a troublemaker, seen as
pariah.
Rather than things I looked at and thought, well, morally maybe I'm not so comfortable with that. And I think we're going through a time where we have to deal with that as well, particularly from an HR perspective of saying, actually, we're becoming more and more aware of saying, no, these things are not cool and they're not okay. Mm-hmm.
That's why I started our show with saying I think things are getting better in some ways, because I do think, my sense is that I think we're becoming more aware of how unconscious we are.
We're becoming more aware of it, but let me give you some examples over the last 12 months. And I've seen this in both the US and Europe. Is the constant discussion and headline has been, we're too PC, we need to get rid of PC, we need to stop what I would consider PC being considerate of other people's feelings. We need to be able to talk openly about people's religion or people's gender, or we need to make decisions on these things and we need to be able to be open about it and not feel like we're being racist or sexist or homophobic or Islamophobic or whatever it is. And we've had more and more of a clamour and agenda to say to people, and opening a Pandora's box to say, it's okay for you to say what you think. You don't have to feel like... And I always felt what PC meant was being consciously aware of not offending other people. So on one hand, I think we've got these very public things like Me Too and stuff, and that's changed some of the agenda about what we think is socially acceptable, and we're not putting up with the things in business that we haven't. But I've had plenty of discussions with very senior HR people who are kind of saying, yeah, but the problem with this Me Too agenda is it's now all gone the other way and people are just attacking men, and these things which are good social movements are becoming a defence point of people saying, yeah, okay, you've only got to look at things like, who's the guru guy, Tony
Robbins.
Tony Robbins issue, when people were arguing and saying, yeah, that was acceptable. And I'm going, if he was in the office, I'd fire him.
A story about Tony Robbins.
Yeah, and he was in my story, and he was intimidating someone in that way physically.
One of his audience members who brought up
a short woman
about Me Too, and he
was saying, well, you're just being a victim, you're just playing to victimhood and those kind of things. Yeah. So I'm using those as examples.
It was all on video. Was that one of his?
Yeah, so I'm using those two examples to say, on one hand, we're having more social conversation and becoming more consciously aware. And I think if I was in a situation where I saw somebody doing something which I thought was wrong, even at this conference, I'm more likely to intervene. I'm more likely to say, hang on a minute, and not feel like I was alone with that. I'd be more comfortable saying, yeah, I'm not really cool with you doing that, or I'm not really cool with what I'm seeing, right? So I think I'd be more likely to do that. I think in general, in the public, it's kind of, and in the workplace especially, it's created two camps. So it's created the drive, and then it's also created the people who are saying...
Well, I really am glad we're having this conversation, because I do think that we are having these conversations, and we used to not have these conversations.
Yes, but what are we doing about them?
Well, it's difficult.
But having the conversation is the first step, because I think you're right. These sorts of tough issues have not been discussed the way we're opening the dialogue now.
Yeah.
It really opening the dialogue for the first time.
And for the first time in a long, forever, right? I mean, we don't, right,
But I'm actually seeing that going both ways, right? So what I'm seeing both ways is we're having more conversation and more dialogue, but I'm seeing more people also becoming more defensive about those issues and saying, we're just being too PC, you can't even have a joke in the office anymore.
Right.
You couldn't. If you liked a woman in the office, you couldn't ask her out for a drink because you're
worried. People also had
people go on both extremes of
people had that response 30 years ago as well, when we first started doing, let's say, harassment training, or back in the ancient days of what diversity training looked like in organizations. We heard those comments then.
Can I tell you?
The story arc has changed.
Can I tell you what I think is the fundamental issue behind all of this? Because I think it's really tied in.
I think so. Yeah. You can definitely,
and that's our concentration over the last period has been on diversity and not inclusion. It's been on targets and numbers.
Yes.
And we've been at conferences where we've talked about those things and we've said, right, we need to get more female engineers, or we need to get more Latin American engineers, and we've had targets for that, we've had positive things. But we haven't had a lot of conversation about inclusion. So while we might have included more people in the workplace, we haven't made that a fit workplace.
Yeah, which is
and
what
that's
you're
why
saying.
you have no disparate. That's why you have no and the more that
But the conversation you're saying about people saying, well, we should have non-PC and PC, that there is a function of not inclusion, right? That is a symptom of people not being included in the conversation. If the people who are feeling one way about something are talking and included with the people who are not, then you'll have a coming together of empathy,
or
right?
not,
and
or not.
Well,
you're getting double divided.
Yeah.
Well, but I think I think human beings, and this is my position, so I don't know if it's true, but my position is that if I really understand you, and I know that you understand me, that we have a certain amount of affinity, and that there's a connection as human beings. I may not like you, I may not love you, but I'll understand you.
Yeah. Let me
But
tell
I
you
think that's
something.
part of that is it's also part of the transitional after effects from recent, not so recent anymore,
Public
elections. But I think of we had a local business in town, fairly large-ish. If I had to guess, probably 50 to 80 employees, sort of in the trade, sort of a trade, sort of industry, and this you never would have seen this before, but it was shocking to me. They had a portable billboard sort of sign outside of their office, and circa early 2017. Put lettering out on this billboard that said, something along the lines of, all you special snowflakes, if you can't handle it, get out, or something like that. It was very in your face.
And aggressive.
And this was a business, and they saw that as okay to put out front and center, and right in front of their business.
They presumably thought it was good for business. So they thought it was a good thing. That was
probably
advertising.
for some people, it probably attracted them as potential customers. But I thought, but there's the perfect example of, well, we didn't have that now that's in your face, but we didn't have that sort of conversation before.
Yeah.
But I think so. One of the things I got recently from some people I was speaking with, they were talking about the problems they've had with diversity is diversity celebrates people's differences, not people's sameness. So an example I had, I can be an ally and sympathetic to someone of colour, to somebody who's from an LGBT community. That's not my community, so I can have sympathy and intentionally try not to do something, but very often I can't have a proper understanding of how things impact them day to day. And increasingly, more and more people are talking to me about this, and I'm thinking, I'm 52 years old and I'm learning life lessons. I think one of the great things about having kids, and I've got 18 and 16-year-old now, is people said, oh, you must be teaching them a lot. I went, no, actually, they're teaching me. They're making me go away and go, examine that view. Think about that thing you said. Mm-hmm. Think about that thing that you thought was so... That's simple things like, if with my wife, if my daughter brings someone home who's got an Asian name or something, my wife will say, oh, where are they from? And they'll go, well, they're from England, of course. Like, where do you think they'd be from? And they really don't want to go, well, why would you think why would that be a question? Or whatever it is. And so I think we're learning those things. And what we've got to do is get that thinking into our workplace where what we're doing, and this is the inclusive issue. I had it recently with someone talking to me, and he said, listen, the last thing I want to do is join... He said, I'm a gay man, and the last thing I want to do is join my gay group at work. He said, that's the last thing I want to be known as when I walk into a room is I don't want people to think that's the gay guy who's an engineer. I want people to think that's an engineer. And he said, I'm very open for people knowing I'm gay, and I don't have any issue with that. And I want to work in a place where I can talk about my partner or bring my husband to a company event or any of those things that they may have had to deal with before. but I don't want that to define me in my work.
I think that's interesting because I was just at a session this morning, and I walked in late, so I didn't hear the whole thing, but, the continuing talk about having affinity groups at work. And I've often wondered, I don't know the answer.
I think it's counterproductive.
I
think the intention is good, but the more I'm learning, 2 years ago I would have been the one at the front of the affinity group going, let's set up the Rainbow Coalition at work and all this kind of stuff.
I learned that about 12 years ago. I had a friend who was in an affinity group, and I heard from them that it seemed like it was very debilitating.
Yeah.
That there was a kind of collusion within the group.
They either felt it was lots of people complaining.
Or like that guy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or like that guy, they just get identified.
Yeah, right. So they said, I want to have people I can identify with who understand my issues.
We only have a few more minutes left, but let's talk about some of the things that we can do, because it's been interesting. Let's talk about some of the things that we think we can do.
We've been all over the map here.
Yeah. About what we can do going forward to make what we're talking about better. I mean, clearly we've identified some problems. At least one or two.
It's back to right where we started. Just put people at the heart of it.
Yeah.
And
what does that mean?
It means being there. For me, it's seeing our role as putting people before the business.
Right.
Honestly.
It's just really funny.
I think there's other people who look after the business.
Just as you were saying that, my producer Andy gave you a glass of water.
Thank you.
Completely on cue. Excellent job, Andy.
That's what I'm here for.
We put guests at the center of our show.
Yeah.
There we go.
I think it's putting people before business, which is less about seat at the table.
Before business.
Yeah. Somebody has got to be the representative and custodian of the people in the business.
Right.
And equally, we've got to not have conversations. I have conversations, genuinely, from a recruiting and talent point of view, where people are saying to me, these are our top 10% of high performers. What are the things we're going to do to keep them, to retain them, to keep them in business? I'm going, well, if we're doing stuff for 10%, are we essentially saying we're not really that bothered about the 90? And this is what I'm seeing coming from businesses focus more and more with good intentions. How do we retain this top 20%? How do we do this? How do we look after the people we don't want to leave, we don't want to lose? Whereas actually what we should be going, from an HR point of view, we're here for all the people. All the people. Our job is to look after the people. Sometimes that means we have to fight the company. Sometimes that means I need to be their voice because they're not brave enough, or I need to bring enough of them together to have a voice.
Right.
But I need to be there first and foremost for the people.
Yeah.
And I think I 100% agree with that.
But then I'm not an HR director, so I don't have to deal with that every day. So it's an easy thing for me to say. I empathise with that.
I think the other piece of it, where we can fix that broken piece of it. Why are we not putting the people first? This is something that just always drives me mad, and this has been at multiple organizations that I've worked with or familiar with. Is we let's use the collective we hire people. We say these are the folks that we want. We've made the determination they are the. We put them through all these drills, all these steps, this cumbersome process to join our organization, and they walk in on the first day, and now we have all this sexy stuff around onboarding, but still, on that first day or shortly thereafter, it immediately becomes, well, they're relegated over here, and we kind of forget about them until they either have risen to that top 10% or the bottom 10%. And we stop. We bring people in, and then all of a sudden we forget about them.
Right.
And again, that's a vast generalization. Obviously, there are some organizations that don't.
So what do we do?
It's, a large part of it becomes, and this is talking strictly looking internally just at HR structures and HR functions. One of the problems when we get to really large enterprises, certainly, because I've lived in this, is within HR we get so siloed. So that even having that conversation around what does that employee life cycle look like, what's that employee experience like, we don't even do a good job within HR of connecting the dots. So,
what can we do? The question now is what can we do? What are the solutions?
It's starting to break that down within HR and talk to each other from the TA. Let's end this foolish argument around TA doesn't want to be part of HR and all this kind of stuff. Well, I mean, no, you're dealing with the people. You have to be in there. And I think it takes some soul searching within HR. It takes some soul searching from
very much so.
The lead HR leaders and CHROs to say,
bring the teams together.
It's broken within my own function.
Yeah.
I need to not go out to the rest of the organization. I need to fix these gaps.
I need to fix us first.
These silos that exist within my function.
Yeah. And I think just to get it even deeper, I think that if we're going to change our workplace, that we need to be looking at our individually as ourselves. Right?
Yes.
Like how you allow your children to give you feedback and you take that on.
Oh, they don't give you feedback. They believe me, it's very specific.
Well, whatever it is.
Very
feedback,
direct.
like they tell you.
I call it, no, you would call it feedback, but it's very specific.
Well, whatever it is, it's information. You get information from
They challenge my view.
Yeah.
And they're
right.
able
And
to
so
do
the
that.
idea is that if we should open ourselves and be open to having our views challenged.
Can I just tell you one really short story?
Absolutely.
Because I think this illustrates this point. So I've been...
and after that, we're going to... So this will be
I've been doing some work with a great lady that I think everyone should look at. There's a lady called Jo Lockwood. So she deals with... she advises companies on transition, like particularly male to female, female to male transition. And I said to her, right, age-old problem, answer this for me. Because she said, ask me anything. She said, I know the first question you're going to ask is which bathroom do I use? She said, that creates my HR issue, number one. That's the first discussion you want to have. She said, so we'll have that. And she said, the second thing is, so I said to her, so how do you deal with, you have someone who comes to work who people have known as a male or known as a female, and they going to continue working. What I'm found in lots of organisations is people dealing with that is saying, we want to deal with that, but we don't have any point of reference. So as an HR professional, I don't actually know what to do. It's back to this empathy thing. What do I do? Do we make a big announcement? Do we let you make an announcement? Do we... And what Jo said is, and this has been a really important lesson for lots of these issues, Jo said, look, you let them choose how they deal with it. So they may want to have a whole load of one-to-one meetings with people they know and then make an announcement. She said some people have done YouTube videos. Some people have wanted the company to have a...
So that's actually happened to me.
Give the choice back to them.
I had the exact same experience. I had someone in our company who transitioned. I'd worked with them as a man, and then she transitioned to a woman. I'd come back to the organization, and she had a one-on-one with me and told me that if I didn't do this, I was going to kill myself. And it was an emotional conversation, and I had a lot of empathy for her. And I hadn't really thought about it because I'm...
And an education, because you don't have a point of reference. So you go, okay,
I come from New York City. I knew a lot of folks who were all over the map. But it was great that she had the conversation with me, and I appreciated it.
Yeah.
So, final thoughts, Robin, and then we'll wrap up.
I think we've come full circle on this conversation with that kind of closing story. It is the way we change work, the way we embrace because we're running around here for these 2 days talking about the future of work. But the way we get there is to step back our thinking a little bit.
Yeah.
And technology is not the answer. Technology may help us change behaviors or get to different outcomes or whatever. But it's, why are we here in the first place? Why did most of us probably kind of get into this general field? Is working with people to help them be successful. And
that's
their
back to that.
success
We have to
makes the
remember
company
that.
successful.
We have to remember that's start the show, close the show, where we started. We got to remember we're here for the people.
Yeah.
And on that, how would people find you if they want to reach out to you?
Google me or robinschooling.com or robinschooling on Twitter.
And Bill?
Facebook, Bill Boorman on Facebook, LinkedIn.
Awesome.
You can tweet me. I might look at it. Just don't email me. And definitely don't phone me.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. You've been listening to The Lorne Epstein Show. I'm your host, Lorne Epstein. We'll see you. Oh, I said that last time. We'll see you next time. And I thought, yeah, we'll see you. We'll see you next time on Lorne Epstein Show. Every Monday, 10 a.m. here on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia.